The mahogany doors of the Meridian Hotel's private dining room swung open, and I paused at the threshold, taking in the scene before me. My entire family was gathered around the table, Alan at the head, naturally, with his designer suit and that smug expression I'd memorized years ago. My parents flanked him like loyal lieutenants, while various aunts, uncles, and cousins filled the remaining seats, all dressed in their finest attempt at looking wealthy. They hadn't seen me yet. I smoothed down my simple black dress, Chanel, though they'd never recognize it, and stepped inside. Chloe? My mother's fork clattered against her plate. What are you doing here? Alan's face darkened immediately. Security must be getting lax. How did you even get past the lobby? The door was open, I said simply, moving toward the empty chair at the far end, the one they'd clearly never intended to fill. This is a private family celebration. Alan stood, his chair scraping against the floor. For successful members of the family. You gave up that right when you tried to destroy my reputation with your lies.
Yes.
The lies. It had started with a missing contract. Alan's tech startup had been bidding for a major government project, something about cybersecurity infrastructure. The contract disappeared from his home office, and naturally, I was the perfect scapegoat. After all, I was just his younger sister, the art history dropout who'd moved back home after failing to make it in New York. You were the only one with access to my office, Alan had raged, pacing our parents' living room like a prosecutor. You knew I was meeting with investors. You wanted to sabotage me. Alan, I didn't even know about the contract. Don't lie to me. He'd slammed his hand on the coffee table. Jennifer saw you coming out of my office that night. Jennifer, his girlfriend who'd never liked me, who'd always viewed me as competition for Alan's attention. Her testimony had been the nail in my coffin. She's always been jealous, my mother had said, shaking her head. Always trying to take what Alan has. First, she dropped out of college while he got his MBA. Now this. I think she sold the information to Alan's competitors, my father added, not even looking at me. How else could she afford that new laptop? The laptop I'd bought with my freelance writing money.
Not that anyone asked.
Get out, Alan had said, his voice cold as winter. Pack your things and get out of this house. You're no longer welcome here, and you're certainly no longer my sister. My parents hadn't protested. The extended family had been informed within hours. Chloe the thief, Chloe the traitor, Chloe the failure who tried to tear down her successful brother out of spite. I'd left with 2 suitcases and no goodbye. I'm not here to cause trouble, I said, settling into the chair despite Alan's protests. I heard about your engagement, Alan. Congratulations. He'd gotten engaged to Jennifer last month. The same Jennifer who'd lied about seeing me in his office. The same Jennifer who, unbeknownst to Alan, had been selling his company's secrets to competitors for years. I knew because I'd hired the private investigator who'd uncovered it all. But that revelation would come later. How generous of you, Jennifer said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. She fingered the massive diamond on her left hand. Though I can't imagine you could afford a proper gift. Are you still doing? What was it? Freelance writing. A soft laugh escaped me. Something like that. You should leave, Alan said. This is embarrassing for everyone. Let her stay for one drink, Uncle Robert interjected. Always the peacemaker. It's been 3 years, Alan. Maybe she's learned her lesson. Learn my lesson. I sipped the water a waiter had discreetly placed before me. He'd recognized me, of course, though he kept his expression neutral. So, Aunt Patricia leaned forward, eager for gossip. Where have you been living, Chloe? Someone said they saw you working at a coffee shop downtown. I did work at a coffee shop, I confirmed. Grounded beans on 5th Street. The table erupted in barely concealed snickers. Well, my mother said, her tone patronizing, honest work is nothing to be ashamed of, even if it's not quite what we hoped for you. At least she's employed, Jennifer added with false sweetness. That's progress from the girl who couldn't even finish her degree. Alan was practically glowing with superiority. My company just closed a $50 million deal with Prometheus Tech. You probably haven't heard of them, Chloe. They're a major player in Silicon Valley. I nearly choked on my water. Prometheus Tech. My company. That's wonderful, Alan, I said carefully. Prometheus is known for being very selective with their partnerships. Well, when you're the best at what you do, the right doors open, he boasted. The CEO herself approved the deal. Lucia Valdez, brilliant woman. You'd be amazed at what she's built from nothing. The irony was almost too delicious. Lucia Valdez was the name I used for all my business dealings. My real name, Chloe Winters, appeared nowhere on the company documents. From nothing? I asked. That must have been quite a journey. Incredible story, Alan continued, warming to his theme. Started with just a laptop and an idea, built a tech empire worth $2 billion in 3 years. Of course, she had the vision and the courage to take risks. Not everyone has that. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus, my COO. The Beijing acquisition just went through. Congratulations, you're now worth $2.3 billion. I set the phone aside as the waiter returned with a bottle of champagne. Cristal, I noted. Alan had ordered the second most expensive bottle on the menu. The most expensive one was in my private cellar downstairs. A toast, Alan raised his glass, to family success and knowing your place in the world. Everyone lifted their glasses. I raised my water. Oh, Chloe, Jennifer laughed. You can have 1 glass of champagne. Though, I suppose you're not used to the good stuff. I'm driving, I said simply. Driving? My father frowned. You have a car? She probably means the bus, Alan smirked. Right, Chloe? Before I could respond, the dining room door opened again. Marcus walked in, his Tom Ford suit immaculate, his expression professionally neutral. Ms. Valdez, he said, looking directly at me, I apologize for interrupting your dinner, but the Tokyo office needs your approval on the Yamamoto merger. The silence was absolute. Alan's champagne glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. Ms. Valdez, my mother whispered. I stood, smoothing my dress. I told you I did freelance writing, didn't I? I just never mentioned that the first piece I sold was a revolutionary encryption algorithm. Or that Grounded Beans was just my nickname for the coffee shop in my first office building, the one I bought 6 months after you threw me out. You're not, you can't be. Alan's face had gone pale. Lucia Valdez? It's a professional name. Harder to connect to the family disappointment, wouldn't you say? I turned to Marcus. Tell Tokyo I'll review the documents tonight. There's one more thing, Marcus said, his expression shifting slightly. The investigation you requested into the Henderson Industries leak from 2021 has concluded. Henderson Industries. Alan's first company. The one that had failed after someone sold his biggest contract to competitors. And, I asked, though I already knew, the digital forensics team traced the breach to a personal laptop registered to Jennifer Martinez. Jennifer's face went white. That's impossible. I don't know what you're talking about. Interesting, I said, pulling out my phone and scrolling to the investigator's report. Because the emails selling Alan's cybersecurity contract to his competitors came from your IP address. You made almost $200,000 selling his secrets while letting me take the blame. Alan, baby, she's lying. But Alan wasn't looking at Jennifer. He was staring at me, the full weight of realization crushing him. The contract, he whispered. You didn't take it.
No, Alan. Your girlfriend did.
And when she needed someone to blame, who better than the disappointment sister who just moved back home? The one nobody would believe anyway? I pulled out a thick envelope from my purse and set it on the table. The full investigation report. Everything Jennifer stole, everyone she sold to, every transaction. I've had it for 6 months. 6 months. Alan's voice cracked. You knew for 6 months and didn't tell me? Tell you. I laughed, and it wasn't a kind sound. The brother who threw me out? Who called me a thief and a liar? Who turned our entire family against me? Why would I tell you anything? But the Prometheus deal is terminated, I said flatly. Effective immediately. Prometheus Tech doesn't partner with companies that harbor corporate espionage. Alan sank into his chair. You're destroying my company.
No, Alan.
You destroyed your own company the day you chose to believe her over me. I'm just choosing not to save it. My mother stood, reaching for me. Chloe, sweetheart. We didn't know. Don't. I stepped back. For 3 years, not one of you reached out. Not one of you questioned whether I might be innocent. I was homeless for 2 months. Did you know that? I slept in my car, showered at the gym, and built my empire from a public library computer because my own family believed I was a thief. We're sorry, my father said quietly. We were wrong. Yes, you were. I picked up my phone, texting my driver. But your apologies don't pay my rent, though ironically, I do pay yours. What? Alan looked confused. Who do you think owns this hotel? I asked. Who do you think owns the building your company leases space in? The medical plaza where Dad gets his treatments? The high-rise where Mom has her precious book club? The color drained from their faces as understanding dawned. Meridian Holdings, Uncle Robert whispered. That's you? Started with one building, I said. The one with grounded beams in the lobby. Now it's a portfolio worth $800 million. You've all been paying me rent for 2 years. My phone buzzed. The car was here. Chloe, please, Alan stood, desperation replacing his earlier arrogance. The company, without Prometheus, I'll lose everything. The house, the cars. The house you're behind on payments for? I asked. The one the bank is foreclosing on next month? His mouth opened and closed like a fish. I know everything, Alan. I know you've been borrowing against the company to maintain your lifestyle. I know Jennifer has been skimming from your accounts. Oh yes, she's been stealing from you too. I know you're 3 months from bankruptcy. Help me, he said, the words seemingly torn from his throat. Please, I'm your brother. No, I said simply. You made it very clear 3 years ago that I wasn't your sister. I'm just living by your rules. I walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Alan? That contract you lost 3 years ago, the government cybersecurity one? They gave it to a small startup that had a revolutionary approach to encryption. Want to guess which startup that was? His face was answer enough. Every success you bragged about tonight, every deal you thought made you better than me, I was there first. Every door you thought opened because of your talent opened because I allowed it. And now, I'm closing them all. You can't do this. Jennifer shrieked, finally finding her voice. We'll sue. With what money? I asked. And on what grounds? That I chose not to do business with you? That I revealed the truth about your corporate espionage? Please try. My legal team could use the entertainment. Marcus opened the door for me, and I turned for one last look at my family. They looked smaller somehow, diminished, their designer clothes and expensive jewelry unable to hide the shock and devastation on their faces. You know what the real irony is? I said. If you'd believed me 3 years ago, if you'd shown even an ounce of faith in me, I would have shared everything with you. The success, the wealth, the power. I would have saved Alan's company, helped Dad's medical practice, invested in Mom's charity work. We could have built an empire together. Chloe, my mother started, but you taught me a valuable lesson. I continued. Family isn't about blood. It's about loyalty. And you showed me exactly how much yours was worth. I walked out, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Behind me, I could hear the explosion of voices, accusations, denials, anger, desperation. But none of it mattered anymore. In the elevator, Marcus looked at me. The penthouse. Yes, I said, watching the floors tick by. And Marcus? Have the lawyers draw up the eviction notices for Alan's office. 30 days. Of course, Ms. Valdez. I smiled at the name. Lucia Valdez, the woman I'd created from nothing, just like the empire I'd built from the ashes of my family's betrayal. As we reached the parking garage, my phone rang. Alan's number. I declined the call. Then my mother. My father. Uncle Robert. One by one, I sent them all to voicemail. 3 years ago, they'd kicked me out with nothing but the clothes on my back and the weight of false accusations. They'd laughed at my protests of innocence, sneered at my tears, celebrated my exile. Now, Alan would lose his company within the month. Without the Prometheus deal, his investors would pull out. Without his office space, his employees would scatter. Jennifer would likely face criminal charges for corporate espionage. I'd already forwarded the evidence to the authorities. And when Alan came knocking on my door, homeless and desperate, just as I had been 3 years ago, well, I'd remind him of his own words. "You're no longer welcome here." The Bentley pulled up, and my driver stepped out to open the door. "Home, Ms. Winters?" I smiled. He was one of the few who knew my real name, one of the people who'd helped me when I had nothing. "Yes, James. Home." As we pulled away from the hotel, my hotel, I saw Alan run out the front doors, frantically waving for me to stop. In the rearview mirror, I watched him grow smaller and smaller until he disappeared entirely. Just like I had 3 years ago. Only this time, I wasn't the one being left behind. I pulled out my phone and opened the email from the Tokyo office. The Yamamoto merger would triple our Asian market share. After that, the expansion into Europe. Then the IPO that would make me one of the youngest billionaires in history. All built on the foundation of a family's betrayal and a brother's lack of faith. They'd wanted me to know my place in the world. I smiled, signing the merger documents with a flourish. I'd found it, and it was so far above them, they couldn't even see me anymore. The city lights blurred past the window as we climbed the hills toward my estate, 20 acres of prime real estate that had once belonged to a tech mogul who'd tried to destroy a small startup called Prometheus Tech. He'd lost everything in the attempt, just like Alan would. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, then saw the preview. "Chloe, it's Jennifer. Please, we need to talk. I'll tell Alan the truth." Too late. 3 years too late. I blocked the number and tossed the phone aside. Tomorrow, the press release would go out announcing the termination of the Prometheus Winters tech partnership. By noon, Alan's investors would be calling. By end of business, his credit lines would be frozen. And somewhere in that chaos, he'd realized that every safety net he thought he had was actually owned by the sister he'd discarded. The girl who'd slept in her car now owned half the city. The failure who dropped out of college now employed 12,000 people. The thief he'd accused now controlled enough wealth to buy and sell his dreams 100 times over. As the gates to my estate opened, revealing the lights of my sprawling home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years. Peace. Not forgiveness. They hadn't earned that. Not revenge. That was just business. But peace. The kind that comes from knowing your worth isn't determined by people who never bothered to see it. "Welcome home, Ms. Winters." My housekeeper greeted me at the door. Home. A word that once meant family, warmth, belonging. Now it meant something different. Something I'd built myself, brick by brick, deal by deal, from the ashes of their betrayal. And unlike the home they'd kicked me out of, this one was truly mine. As I settled into my study to review the Tokyo documents, one last text came through. Alan again, this time from Jennifer's phone. "Name your price. I'll pay anything." I smiled and typed back a single word. "No." Then I blocked that number too and got back to work. Empires don't build themselves, after all. And I had so much more to build.